Um, so, but because there's probably a few more folks that are going to show up, but because right now we have 14 students enrolled, we technically can stay in person in this class, so that's my plan. I mean, obviously, if we get more people, I think this classroom will allow us to have 20 students, and then we would have to do a hybrid. So unless we get a rush, a lot of people, we should be able to stay the whole semester. In person, in class. But I will ask if you are, obviously I'll get the notification if you have symptoms or get sick or something, but don't rely on the notification being enough. I want to get an email directly from you. So if you're going to be sick, or if some of you are athletes, I know we get afternoon class, you might have to be out for sports or whatever. I'll do my best to try to record the class, but we're not going to have an official Zoom link for the class because we're going to be in person. Is that fair enough? But I will try to do my best to record it if need be, if you're going to be out, and then I'll provide you the link so you can watch the recording. I'll also try, if you're going to be out, I've done this in the past, especially with this course, because the material's not the easiest. If you like, I'll send you a PDF of the lecture notes too for that day if you happen to be out, so that you'll have both the sort of recording and the lecture notes. The first thing I'm going to do is pass this around and just put your name on it, so I can have some attendance record. And I realize that some of you may or may not stay depending on what your class schedule looks like, but I assume most of you that are here today will end up staying here. And then the next thing I'm going to do, I know I emailed this to you and it's on Canvas, but I'm going to give you a hard copy of the syllabus as well. So take one copy to paper clip together and then pass them on. All right. If you don't know me, I'm Tim Garvin Layton, known mostly on campus as Rev Tim. I'm also the campus minister. So some of you may, if you've never had a class with me, you may have encountered me in the space as being the campus minister here at Piedmont. So I teach in the philosophy and religion department, mostly religion courses. I've had some of you in some other classes in the past. So my office is in Daniel 321, right at the top of the little curved stairs there. So if you ever have a question, you need anything, you can stop by. If you're a coffee drinker, I have coffee there as well. So the student worker will be happy to make you coffee if you like. And you don't have to provide them any tips or pay them. So thanks. There's an attendance one around, you can sign that. Let's see, what else? A couple other housekeeping. We are gonna, a week from today, which is a week from Thursday, I have a doctor's appointment and will not be here in the afternoon. I will send out a reminder. We will not have class that day, but I will send something for you all to watch or otherwise do on that day. But we will not meet in class and we won't have Zoom. So that's January 28th, which is next Thursday. All right, the other thing, if you haven't purchased it yet, you need this book. The right thing to do. It's a survey or readings in moral philosophy or ethics. You cannot survive this class without this textbook. And so I will cover stuff in this, but this is an interactive class. Ethics really doesn't work if I just stand up here and lecture. And we'll talk a little bit about the format in a minute, but You will need that textbook because there'll be assigned readings for most after, and starting in a couple weeks for almost every class. And it's my expectation that you'll do the readings because hopefully we can talk about them. But the other thing, on Thursdays, at least half of the time on Thursdays, we will be in small group in this classroom, and you all will analyze an ethical problem and then present it to the class. So if you're not reading this textbook and following along in the lecture notes and so forth, you're going to be lost. So unlike some classes where professors actually, tell you need to have a textbook and they never use it, that's not going to be the case here. So please make sure you buy the textbook. You won't need it for the next couple of class sessions, but please make sure you get it. The format will mostly be lecture on Tuesdays. Today we'll go over the syllabus and I'll give you a little primer stuff just to get you, orient you, and give you a little information. Thursdays, maybe the first part of the class will be lecture and the second part will be small group discussion. Maybe some Thursdays, the whole time will be small group discussion. We'll just to see how that goes. The reason I'm doing that is one thing I've discovered. I've taught ethics now several times in both this ethics and environmental ethics. The students that are able to articulate and dialogue and discuss do much better in this class than students that just sort of sit there and don't participate, because the purpose of this class is for you all to learn how to reason ethically, okay? It's probably the most important skill you'll learn in your whole life, because almost everything you do in your life has some consequence, right? You get up in the morning, you decide to do this or do that. There's a consequence for the decisions you make, depending on which way you choose to go, right? And that consequence can have further consequences as the day goes on. So this course is going to help you learn how to analyze that process and think about it. So that, sure, you might just think, oh, today I'm going to do this and wear this type of clothing. I'm going to go here and do that. And you might sort of do that almost automatically without a lot of thought. But as the day goes on and you get different responses from people, it might be because of the decisions you made when you got up in the morning. That's sort of the basic thing. The other important thing about this class is that we all participate in ethical decisions. And we all have a moral compass, and I'll unpack that a little bit more in a minute. But there's something in our life that guides how we behave and act, okay? Whether it's a higher being, whether it's your parents, whether it's your best friend, whether it's something that you learned in kindergarten that you carried with you since kindergarten. There's something that causes you to act and behave in a certain way. That's part of your moral compass. That's part of how you decide whether things are right or wrong and the actions you do. So that's what we're going to explore this semester, is what that moral compass is for you. And then how you employ it in the decisions that you make in the world. How many of you are 18 or older? How many of you voted in this past election? Okay, good. I don't care which way you voted or what you did. That was a moral decision. Whether you thought about it that way or not, the simple act of going to the voting booth and casting a ballot was a moral decision. Because you voted for someone who will have power to potentially create laws and govern our society for the next 4 years or 6 years if it was a senator, or 2 years if it was a member of the House. So you made a moral decision in selecting those candidates that you voted for. Now, you might not have thought about that. You might have simply voted because that's the way your parents do, or the party you're affiliated to, or you liked the things that the person said, or the hairstyle that they had that day, or whatever it was. But it was in fact a moral decision. That's why I sent you the email the other day asking you to watch the inauguration tomorrow. The swearing in part is not really so important, which is going to happen at noontime, but sometime shortly after noon, and I recognize some of you might have class tomorrow at noon, President-elect Biden will become the President of the United States, and he's going to offer an inaugural address. It's usually a long, boring speech that might go on for an hour and a half or something like that. I want you to set aside any of your preconceived notions. I want you to set aside whether you voted for him or not and listen to what he says, because in the context and the text of what he says, he's going to lift up moral issues. He's going to lift up ethical issues. He's probably going to talk about healthcare related to COVID. He's probably going to talk about masks and wearing them, the need for vaccines. He's probably going to talk about immigration issues. He's probably going to talk about budgets. All of these things to you probably seem rather boring and mundane. But the fact of the matter is each of them has a moral implication. And they might actually impact your life personally, because the decisions that the president makes or doesn't make could have consequences to our personal lives. And so that's why I've asked you to watch it. If you have class, I'm sure you'll be able to find it online later on. If you don't, please do it, because you're going to write about it after. And so I really want you to listen to what the person's saying. And that's why I'm saying you need to set aside your sort of own political leanings and listen to the actual agenda that the president's laying out, because that's the sort of moral agents, those are the sort of moral things that he's raising up or potentially raising up. All right. Let's look at the syllabus for a little bit, and then I just want to open up with a couple things, and that's sort of where we'll leave it at today. All right. So as I said, this is on Canvas. This is your book. Obviously, the first page sort of just lays out where my office is, the course, and that kind of stuff. Grading scale on, it's double-sided. So grading scale is on the second page. And the first thing I want to draw your attention to is what you're going to be graded on in this class on the second page. So there is an expectation that you're going to participate. As I said, there'll be small group discussion. I also expect that you'll participate during the lecture time. I'm going to ask questions, and they're not sort of rhetorical questions. I actually want you to answer the questions. And one thing that we need to say, and I didn't say this at the start, ground rules in this class, because we're dealing with sensitive issues. We're going to talk about abortion. We're going to talk about racism. We're going to talk about incarceration. We're going to talk about drugs and whether they should be legalized or not. We're going to talk about guns and the use of them in our society. And we're going to talk about the freedom of speech. These are ethical and moral questions that we're going to grapple with. Two things I expect: respect from everybody in the class. That means I'm going to respect you all, and I expect you respect each other. There are going to be times when we disagree in this class. It's inevitable, because there's at least 15 of us in here, and not all of us believe the same thing about all these topics. We need to recognize that it's okay to disagree, and the other thing we're going to learn how to do is learn how to disagree in a fashion that's responsible, meaning that we can talk to each other in dialogue about these conflicting issues. What I don't want to see is what we often see in general society, where people bully and shout and just, my voice is louder than yours, so I win the argument. That's not what we're engaged in here. The other important thing is politics are going to come up, because we're talking about ethics, and many of these issues have political ramifications, meaning that they're decided by budgets that governments pass, they're decided by representatives and senators and so forth. I don't care what your political leanings are, but you must be free and able to share your views without feeling like you're being constrained, and that you feel like you can enter into conversation with other people. Okay? Is that fair enough? The other important thing is that you need to be able to talk to each other about these things and ask questions to each other as well. If you're not able to do that, this class won't really work, because then it's just me sort of spouting off this theory, etc. But you all need to actually learn how to think about these and process these. The last thing is, I'm going to challenge you. Know first and foremost, whatever you believe, that's your belief. I'm not here to try to change what you believe. I am here, however, to help you think critically about what you believe. So if you just say, well, I think that we should deport 13 million undocumented aliens and send them back to the countries because I don't think they came here and I don't think we should give them citizenship. I'm going to tell you you're wrong, not because you want to deport the people, but that's an uncritical process, okay? You haven't actually articulated a reason why they need to be deported. You haven't articulated how that's going to impact society, okay? A perfect example. What do you think many undocumented persons do in this country for work? Most of them work. What do you think most of them do for work? Farming. What else do you think a lot of them do? Yep, labor. Yeah, right. So if we were to deport 13 million people that are engaged in construction, farming, etc., what would happen to those industries?
It'd take a big hit.
What's that?
It'd take a big hit.
Right. And then some of them might collapse, right? This is how you begin to think about the moral implications of what you're suggesting. You see how that begins to broaden out the question of, it's not simply, I don't want these people here, so let's send them home. What are the implications of all those industries and society in the society? So if the farming industry collapses partially, that means you might not have food on your table, or it might cost considerably more to have food on your table, for example. So that's what I mean when I would challenge you and push back. It wouldn't be the notion about the deportation. It would be the question about what's the larger consequences of that action. Okay? That's what we're going to talk about here. So attendance, participation is going to be 10% of your grade, and I'll keep track of your attendance, and how you participate. Half of your grade in this class is going to be the reflections that you do each week starting next week. These are one page, and they're going to be a response to either the reading that you've been assigned for that week, or class lecture, or something that you've been studying on your own. So next week, for example, I'm going to ask you to write a reflection on the inaugural address tomorrow. That's what I'm going to ask you to do. That's going to be half your grade. These aren't hard. They're your personal reflections. They're a page. Carly has been in class with me several times. She can tell you that she's done them in other classes, and it takes a little bit to process them first, right? Is that a fair? But once you understand it, you don't have to do research, because you're going to have already done the lecture or the reading or whatever, and you'll submit those each week. This is a way for me to make sure that you're participating in the class and learning the material, but it also gives you an opportunity to share your beliefs about these things. Then you're going to have one final paper at the end, which will be 10 pages, a research paper that will require footnotes and the whole 9 yards. You're going to submit an outline or a draft of that, like about halfway through the semester. And you're going to get 5% of your grade for that in that submission. The reason I'm doing that, that gives me an opportunity to look at your paper, read over what you're thinking about and writing on, and give you feedback so you can write the best final paper. There's no exams in this class. There's no final exam. When you upload that last paper, you are done with this class. I presume that the vast majority of you are taking this for Gen Ed. So you'll either have to upload it, if you're in the religion section of it, you'll have to upload it to the religion qualifier that's further down in your syllabus. And if you're in the philosophy section, you'll upload it there. But once you submit it, you're done. So if you happen to turn it in a week before the end of the semester, then you won't have anything else to do for this class. And I have it due, I think, the first day of finals, so I'm trying to get it done out of your way before you start finals as well, so you don't have to worry about that paper. Any questions so far? All right. You'll use MLA format, that's all in the paper. All right, let's just briefly go through a little bit of the syllabus. So page 3, today, hand out the syllabus and give you a brief course description. Thursday, we'll start looking at some of the moral theories, and that will continue for the next couple class sessions, because you're going to see that we're going to study about 8 different moral theories before you get underway. Next Thursday, remember I said January 28th, there won't be any class. You'll still have your weekly reflection due, and that's going to be the one I'm going to ask you to write about the inaugural address, and I'll give you a little more information about that. The first time you'll use the book will be on week 4, and there's a whole section in here on drugs and addiction. And what we're going to look at is whether society, particularly our society, should legalize drugs and what that would look like. Obviously, marijuana is legal in many states now, both for recreational use and medicinal use. So we're going to look at those kind of questions. But marijuana is not the only thing. Some people want to legalize all drugs, so heroin, cocaine, etc. Well, is that a good idea? You know, and so those are the kind of questions we'll look at when we get to that. Then in week 5, this is not a topic that's in your book, the corporations, political donations, and platform banning. But considering the actions of Twitter the last few weeks, and they banned a number of prominent American citizens from their platforms, some forever, others for shorter periods of time. This is an important question in our society about how free speech operates in the morality that corporations have, okay? So what's the moral responsibility that a corporation has? So we'll look at that question. And not just Twitter, you know, Facebook, etc. Then poverty, the death penalty, so forth. On April 8th, which is on page 5, you'll see that that's when the draft of your final paper is due. And then your final paper is due on May 6th. Are there any questions about the syllabus or anything I've said so far? Are you all still with me so far? All right. Today, I just want to briefly cover a few things, and then you're free to go. It's probably good that you, I don't have an electronic policy, so if you take notes using your laptop, you're free to bring your laptop and take notes on your laptop. I know you probably didn't come today thinking about taking notes, and that's okay, because what I'm going to cover today is just sort of like the big 30,000 foot overview. But be prepared on Thursday to take notes. So whatever format, if you write your notes in a notebook, that's great. If you do it on your computer, that's fine. All right. So the words moral and ethics and cognates, those things that are similar to those words, are often used interchangeably. However, it's useful for us to make some distinctions. You're going to hear me throughout this semester talk about morals and ethics, and this course is actually titled Ethics, right? That's the title of this course. So morality, this is what morality is. Morality is the system through which we determine right and wrong conduct. So morality is the system that we use to determine right and wrong conduct. Ethics is the philosophical study of morality. So what we're going to do in this class is we're first of all going to we're going to study morality. That's the first thing we're going to do. So that sort of overview, I'm going to lay out for you the sort of different ethical theories and norms and standards. And then you're going to learn how to use these to apply to situations that you might confront in the world. So that's why this course is called Ethics, because you're studying morality. So the questions I want you to think about as you enter into this semester is, what is your ultimate source of morality? So when I said everybody has a moral compass, what is your moral compass? And I want you at some point between now and Thursday to write that down somewhere. Because on Thursday, we're going to talk about your moral compass a little bit. So I want you to think about what your moral compass is. Where does the idea of right and wrong originate to you? So I want you to think about where the idea of right and wrong originates for you. Okay. So what's a moral theory? A moral theory is a structured set of statements used to explain or predict a set of facts or concepts. A moral theory then explains why a certain action is wrong or why we ought to act in certain ways. So we're going to, for the next several weeks, look at moral theories. And moral theories are the process on how you determine whether an action is wrong or not, okay? So what you're going to discover in this class is a lot of things we're going to talk about have fancy names, and philosophers have spent decades, sometimes centuries, discussing these, and you're going to think, oh yeah, that's the thing that I learned at home when I was like 3 years old. No one ever told me that was consequentialism, or no one ever told me that was such and such moral theory. Okay? But you're going to discover that you know many of these things already, even if you didn't know the names of them or exactly how they quite work. And for most of us, we smash these things together. So we take several of them and use them simultaneously to help us understand the world. Okay. Also, moral theories provide the framework upon which we think and discuss in a reasoned way and evaluate specific moral issues. So moral theories give us the framework on how to talk about these things. This is most important because what happens when you get in an argument with your friends over something? You stop and say, wait, let's use consequentialism to analyze this situation. What do you tend to do? Argue until someone gives up, right? Here, we're going to build a framework so you can actually learn how to have conversations, maybe to persuade the other person, but more importantly, to help the other person understand really where you're coming from. And you'll be doing it from the same starting point. Because lots of times when we talk about something, your friend is using this framework over here, and you're using this framework over here. You're talking, but you're just going like this because each of you are using different frameworks. So here, we're going to learn these different frameworks and learn how to utilize them to better articulate and to understand these moral problems. Fair enough? All right. Two other things. Are moral theories descriptive or prescriptive? Now, this might seem like a sort of silly question, but hear me out here. In presenting a moral theory, are we merely describing how people in their everyday doings and thinkings form judgments about right and wrong? So when we use a moral theory, are we simply describing how people act and make moral, do right and wrong things? Or are we prescribing how people ought to make these judgments? So most people take moral theories as prescriptive, meaning that you're telling people how they ought to act, okay? What we're going to discover is that we do both of these things. However, we're most resistant on the prescriptive part because we don't want to judge other people and we don't want to tell other people how to live their life, right? I mean, for the most part, we don't want to do that. So often we'll use moral theories to describe whether people are acting right or wrong. But one of the things that's important for us to understand is that we also need to prescribe this because as a civilized society, your name is? Okay, Monty, and I know Carly said, the two of you live in the same society, right? I can't simply go around just describing how you act and how Carly acts and assume that both of you are going to operate and believe that this thing that you do and this thing that she does, that you both see them as good or bad. This is why we create laws. So we determine in our society that some things are legal and some things are illegal, right? Generally, but not always, things that we say are legal, we would presume to be moral, okay? Meaning good. And things that are illegal, we would presume to be immoral or bad, right? That is not always the case, however. Let's take killing for just 1 second. Now, if I walk up and shoot Carly, I'm probably going to go to jail for doing that, right? And then my attorney is going to make an argument of why I walked up and shot her. Right? Now, generally, most of you, and myself included, would say the simple fact of shooting here is a wrong thing to do, which would mean it's not moral. But my attorney might be able to argue that it's legal what I did. Maybe she was attacking me and it was self-defense. Maybe she wasn't attacking me and I just simply walked up and shot her. So then not only can I not make an argument of self-defense, so I'm probably going to go to jail, but you're also going to say that I had no justification, no right to do that, which would make the act also wrong. Now, let's look at the same thing, but the state. Georgia has capital punishment. We put people on death row in Georgia and then sometimes we execute them, right? I'm not asking whether you agree with death row or execution or not, but the state is killing someone. But generally, society has said that that is moral because they are killing that person as a consequence of that person's actions. Okay? So this is why these kind of frameworks are important, because both of these situations, the killing of Carly and the killing of that person on death row, the person died in either situation. But in one situation, we said it was wrong and that it was immoral. It was not good. And in the other, we said that it was both legal and moral because of the reasoning, that the framework that we used. So one of the things I want you all to understand is that this is why descriptive and prescriptive parts of moral theory are very important. Because society prescribes how you live, right? Don't they set up guidelines for how you should live and act? So society, and we're part of society, so we make determinations about how people should live their life. And then we agree to participate in that or not, right? All right. Last thing I want to just highlight for the moment, and this will be it for today, is the concept of meta-ethics. Have you ever heard the term metaphysics? Anybody have an idea what metaphysics is?
Is it like proposed that like physics they can't prove, but it's like possible?
So metaphysics is the broad study of the larger concept under physics. So it could be things that are out there that they think are possible, but they don't have a way to prove them. Meta-ethics, meta meaning large, meta-ethics studies each question at such questions as these. Is morality just a convenient fiction? Now, we're not going to go too far into the road of meta-ethics, but I just want you to understand. So is morality just a convenient fiction? If not, can moral standards be true? Suppose they are. Does their truth depend on personal opinion, social consensus, God's commands, or something else? This is where we'll look at meta-ethics. Because one of the questions is ethics, are standards just based on how you believe about something and how you believe about something and how you believe about something, or are they something that's more universal, okay? And are they true for all times, or are they only true for this moment? So that's what meta-ethics. And so we're not always going to ask those kind of questions, but there will be times when we look at that, particularly when we're dealing with contentious issues. Say for abortion. Abortion becomes a very personal issue for every person that's involved in the conversation, no matter where you sit on the table on the question. And so meta-ethics would have a great place in that study, because is it simply a personal issue? Do the ethics around it simply originate out of yourself, or is it something that society has consensus on? Or is it something that a transcendent being, in this case God, tells us how we should behave, and therefore that's what we accept? So, all right. Everybody with me so far? Does this seem, do you feel like you understood what you got yourself into when you signed up for this Gen Ed course? Okay. If you're not happy, Dr. Silber teaches this at 8 a.m. on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and he'll have like 6 exams, and you'll read a different book, and he'll have a different approach, and you can get your Gen Ed requirement at 8 a.m. on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I hope you'll stay. I'll do my best to keep it challenging and engaging for you throughout the semester. There will be some times where we'll watch videos, or I might assign them outside of class, either on YouTube or movies that I might have you watch and so forth. But when we get to that, I'll let you know. All right. Can I see that? So I don't think you got signed in here. All right, that's all. Thanks, and I'll see you all on Thursday.